Destiny 2 has now become a problem. I am worse slept, and even though I know that the chances are my next powerful engram will contain trash, well darn, I still am oddly motivated to get it. Yeah, even though the upfront cost of Destiny 2 is quite rough these days, I am back into the game after a bit of a hiatus. With Bungie purchasing its freedom from Activision Blizzard and the subsequent release of Season of the Drifter, I thought that it was about time that I properly jumped back into the game and properly got into it, having previously made my way through the bare essentials of Forsaken a month ago and having not touched the game since launch before that. Today's video serves two purposes. Number one, Season of the Drifter thoughts, and number two, my thoughts as a returning player to this game after quite some time. It really is my first mechanical deep dive back into it. Of course, Season of the Drifter is an ongoing thing, so I likely will release a final review in a month or two, but for now, let's kick it off with my Season of the Drifter thoughts. So like many modern DLCs, it does not all release at once. Instead, it has its features be spread out over a number of weeks. That said, the core of it is here, the new Gambit Prime game mode and Reckoning. These are two interconnected game modes that advance the Gambit feature that was added in Forsaken. Now to quickly catch you up, Gambit is a PvEVP mode where two teams spawn into different instances of an identical map. Waves of enemies will appear. When killed, those enemies will drop motes. Your goal is to kill those enemies, to collect their motes, and to bring them back to your bank. Now, if you hand in 5, 10, or 15 motes at once, you'll spawn in a small, medium, or large blocker for the enemy at their bank. Now, a blocker, yeah, it appears at their bank. It also temporarily shuts down their bank. That means that they can't turn in their motes, and it really jams up their plans. Then a member of your team can invade the enemy's map through a portal, with anybody that they kill actually losing all of their motes, all the ones they were carrying. Then when 75 motes are banked, a primeval boss spawns on your map, and the first team to kill their map's primeval will win the round. But of course, if an invader kills your teammates, or the primeval kills your teammates, then the primeval will heal. So the base Gambit game mode felt really quite innovative. It had tight pacing, often leading to very intense moments where both teams were just inches away from victory. Gambit Prime, well, it's a lot more than just a harder version of Gambit. It really is. It's one of the most intense and enjoyable game modes that I've played in quite some time, being surprisingly punishing. Of course, punishing in a good way, and it just is great to see consequences in a big modern title like this. So, Gambit Prime only has one round, but that round lasts far longer than regular Gambit rounds. Like the original Gambit game mode, it's all about collecting motes and then banking them, but with a few twists. You have to collect 100 motes up from 75, and if either blockers or the enemy invader are alive for too long, they'll actually drain motes from your bank. Combine this with the PvE enemies being more challenging, and you have a far more competitive experience. Strategy really does become far more important. For example, maybe banking multiple blockers at the same time, and then sending over an invader to utterly mess up your enemy's game plan, invading just at the right time when your enemy, or when the enemy team is carrying loads of unbanked motes. This stuff all matters a lot more in Gambit Prime, and when you finally do get on to fighting the boss, well, again, it is very different. The boss has an invincibility shield that is broken by killing 3 mini-bosses. Now, when the third mini-boss dies, a circle of light appears, and anyone inside that gets a super strong power boost, which really allows them to dish out damage. So this essentially all acts as a brief damage window, because after not that much time, the boss will get its shield back and the mini-bosses will respawn. On paper, though, it sounds kind of simple, right? You just, do that a few times, rinse and repeat, and the big boss dies. It's not that simple at all. What ensues is one of the most fast-paced and hectic modes that I've played in a long time, because you see that damage window? Well, that's prime time for the enemy team to invade you, and remember that enemy invader kills, well, they'll heal up your boss, and this means you can get locked into a really tense stalemate. However, it normally doesn't go on for too long because you do get a stacking damage buff every time you trigger your boss's damage window. Overall, though, it really is quite good. For an example, you'll maybe want to, in terms of strategy, wait to kill the third mini-boss, and you'll want to do that after the enemy invader has been taken out. And really, all of this can just create amazing gameplay moments. In one of my recent matches, the enemy team was about to win, but I invaded. I got enough kills to heal their boss to the point where they could not kill it within their damage window. We then came super close to killing our boss in our damage window, but we could not quite make it, and we did lose. But it was a super exciting moment that proves just how intense Gambit Prime matches can be. Now, there is also one other aspect to this mode, and that is gear, because there are a few different roles: Invader, Reaper, Sentry, and Collector. So that's invading the enemy, killing NPCs, defending from invaders and blockers, and collecting motes. Well, each one of these has a gear set that gives you specific role bonuses. Now, this gear is earned through Reckoning, which is another game mode that has been added in this season. Right now, we can only access Reckoning level 1 and 2, and that gives us some of the more basic gear, but of course, once Reckoning level 3 comes out, that's not going to be a problem, and we will have the full versions of that gear with all of the perks unlocked. Now, as the weeks go on, that means people will get higher and higher power versions of those sets, they'll get more perks, we'll see the roles become stronger, and that will lead to a more extreme version of Gambit Prime that I'm really excited to play. Now, doing all this stuff in Gambit Prime will earn you synths. The synths can be turned into motes, which are then spent in the Reckoning mode, which is a 4-player versus environment horde mode. Right now, only the first and second difficulty levels are available. It's very doable on level 1, level 2 is a lot harder though, but they're absolutely there's a proper chance of failure. It is quite punishing, you have to prepare. So before starting a match, you wager your motes, you jump into a portal, and you have to kill enemies as fast as you can to increase your dominance percentage. Once that hits 100, a boss spawns for you to kill, and if you do that in time on Reckoning level 1, you'll get some gear. But if you've done Reckoning level 2, then you get teleported into a new room with a bridge that you have to build by capturing and holding 6 different points on a pretty damn tight timer, and then once that's done, you go into another room that has mini bosses and a whole bunch of other stuff for you to do, and that mode really is quite challenging. Overall, they're both designed to be farmed out, and so far I really do quite like them. The level of challenge is really significant actually, especially with level 2, and as the weeks go on and level 3 comes out, it really will be a bit more scary. And it really is just quite fun. You face different combinations of taken on different days. They've got different modifiers such as increased grenade damage or maybe glass, which is a nasty one that halves your health but doubles regen and makes it very punishing. Now, the higher levels of Reckoning have multiple rooms, of course, which is different from the first one, and we'll just have to wait and see what Reckoning 3 is like over 2, because 2 is a hell of a lot harder than 1. And that's essentially the core of Season of the Drifter. You've got 2 new modes with more difficult versions of the Reckoning opening up over time, and with Gambit Prime evolving as people get their hands on more of the powerful gear and therefore get larger set bonuses. Past that though, there is also going to be quest content involving the 9, and as always, there's a bunch of new weapons for you to hunt down. So for me, as somebody who loves Gambit, this has been a fantastic addition to Destiny 2. It really has given me more stuff to do, and I mean, the list of stuff to do in Destiny is just crazy now, and especially because I've also yet to complete the Black Armory and still have plenty to do in the Dreaming City from Destiny 2 Forsaken. It really does feel like there's a wealth of content, so let's just talk about the broad experience of returning to Destiny 2 after launch. So coming back to Destiny 2 all starts with Forsaken, which, I mean, as always for the franchise, has a pretty forgettable plot that happens to contain cool lore if you kind of look for the lore. Forsaken ends by throwing you into the Dreaming City, which is a big zone that once again just shows how strong Bungie's art direction is. And while you're there, you've got to do your weekly and daily bounties. Bounties involve things like interacting just with a fair few random and strange named systems, doing your Ascendant Challenge, the Blind Well, purchasing those bounties with dark fragments, entering the Ascendant Realm using a Queen's Tincture. As you can see, it's word salad. And this is just a broad problem for Destiny. Nothing is named in a simple fashion, and that does make it quite difficult to get back into the game. It means you do have to rely on external guides and things like that to actually get you up to speed. But to break it down, basically, you've got the Blind Well, which is a horde mode that is pretty fun to do once or twice a week. You've got the Ascendant Challenge, which is a platforming puzzle with a boss at the end, so you kind of do those things weekly in the Dreaming City, as well as essentially daily quests, and it all is decent fun. You know, you've got good world events, you've got fun lost sectors, and overall it just is a fantastic quality zone. So that's really the Dreaming City. It's all quite good. Then you've got the Black Armory, which once again sounds like just a whole bunch of complicated things. Once you actually break down what's involved though, you get the core of a weapon, which is a weapon frame, and then you power it up by doing a whole bunch of tasks. Then you take it to a forge, and that leads to a horde mode that ends with you getting some pretty cool loot. It is a way to get gear fairly directly that once again is a nice addition to your list of weekly things to do. And once you add that to the content of Season of the Drifter and you still doing the Dreaming City, there is quite a lot to do in this game. I mean, the game has just also a large number of legendary and exotic weapons and armor to hunt down. There's even more if you want to hunt down that gear with the ideal perks. I mean, there's just so much progression in this game. And then on top of that, you've got the various different bits of gear that come from quests and pursuits, and those things often take quite a lot of time to grind away at, with examples being, the new one that just came out, Thorn, you've got the Ace of Spades from Forsaken, you've got the Last Word, which has recently been added, and that's not even touching on doing the other things, like the weekly Nightfall, your strikes. And Nightfall is basically just a more challenging version of the Strike, which is a 3-player dungeon. You've got all the raid content, which, from what I understand, is some of the best in the world, even compared to World of Warcraft. And yes, they are totally apples to oranges, but just the design work that they put into the Destiny raids in terms of like encounter design is incredible. I've only done the launch raid, but my Destiny 2 playing friends have been doing a lot more of the raid content of the game. And they've just had very strong things to say about the raid content thus far, so I'm really looking forward to getting into that. Then, of course, there's a Crucible. As ever, it's really enjoyable. I just love Bungie multiplayer content, and that's something that has went really all the way back to Halo 2. So it's a massive list of things to do, loads of gear to get, many activities to do. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Well, that likely depends on what kind of player you are. If you want to sit down and you just want to play a game for 12 hours, finish it, have a great time, and just have that be that, Destiny 2 is not for you, it just isn't. But as a loot shooter, I think it's one of the best executed loot shooters out there, especially in terms of just the fundamentals of its gameplay. The core of moving and shooting is essentially perfect. There's a wide variety of enemies and weapons and armor. The progression is quite well designed, especially once you get into some of its deeper systems. The addition of modes like Gambit and Gambit Prime and Reckoning really has expanded the breadth of the game as well, which, after Forsaken, Black Armory, and the first stages of Season of the Drifter, just feels a lot more broad and robust than it did at launch. I'd say that while this probably is the best loot shooter, there's a downside, and that is price. Destiny 2 is now sold with Forsaken bundled in, so that's an entry price of $34.99. But if you want Forsaken and the Season Pass, that's a £60 bundle, with the Season Pass alone being £30. Given how we're well into Season of the Drifter, you pretty much do need the Season Pass to get the full game experience, and that means that Destiny 2, a year and a half after launch, assuming you purchased it at launch for full price, well, it costs full price again to get back into. And the business model is going to be prohibitive here, to the point where I wonder if this was just something that was set up during their publishing deal, and I mean, it's just kind of a legacy business model, and maybe if they were more free, they do something different. I mean, thinking about Anthem, well, if that game manages to fix itself in 12 months' time, you'll be able to jump back into it for free if you own it, because all future content updates are included in the upfront purchase. Even with Division 2, most of its future game content comes, like, for free outside of its Season Pass. And then, of course, you've got Warframe, which is a free-to-play game. Now, when you combine all of this stuff with Destiny 2's really annoying cash shop, yeah, it's a black mark in a game that's otherwise great. Now, if you end up playing it for 50, 100, or 200 hours, it's easily going to be worth that high price. But casually dabbling in this game, the current business model makes that quite a bit harder. It really is a tough sell. And one thing that is really also very clear to me, it's a game that massively benefits from being played with friends over VoIP. I'd almost say more so than other games, mainly down to just how many of its modes really do work better with a team. Gambit Prime with even at least one other person is a lot better than just all with randoms. Doing Nightfalls without friends just does not sound like a good experience. Doing Crucible without friends, if I was only playing this game solo, I don't think I would find value in it. I don't think I'd be playing it. As it stands though, Destiny 2 is a fantastic social game that's easily taking 1 to 2 hours per night, sometimes 3. Of course, that means you need to convince 2 to 3 people to drop money on Forsaken and the Season Pass. And that really is going to limit Bungie's ability to regrow this game. So I have to wonder, will Season 3, or Year 3, I guess, will Year 3 have a different business model than Year 2 and Year 1? And will Destiny 3 have a different business model to Destiny 2? I'd be super interested to find out. But that is it for this video. That is my thoughts on coming back to Destiny 2. Of course, there's a lot more content on this channel. If you want to hear about the amazing Halo news and how that's coming to PC that we covered yesterday, you can check that video out. There's also a gaming news recap. There's an Epic Store video going up today that is kind of crazy because it's a Kickstarter game that was originally going to be on Steam that is now an Epic Game Store exclusive, which is pretty wild. So there's a lot of stuff to check out. Thank you very much for watching this video, and with that, I will see you next time.